Thank you very much. Thank you. So welcome, colleagues. Thanks for taking the time for us this morning. So the meeting is being recorded, as you heard. I've just asked for that to go live, and it's on YouTube via the County Council's website. Filming is also permitted by the press and public, and so by remaining at the meeting, you are consenting to being recorded or potentially recorded. Please be aware that filming is only permitted in the room whilst the meeting is taking place. Filming during breaks or anywhere else in the building is not permitted. We are not expecting a fire drill, but in the event that there is a fire alarm, please exit via the reception and follow everyone across to the Great Hall. Toilets facilities can be found to the right when you leave the hall. There is a hearing loop, so the room is fitted with an infrared hearing loop, which is permanently switched on. You will need either a neck loop if you use a hearing aid or headphones to amplify the sound. Both are available on request from reception. I'd like to welcome all councillors and members of the press and public to this meeting. So apologies for absence. Has there been any apologies?
We have apologies from Councillor Phil Davies, the Vice Chairman, and Councillor Vivian Atchwal. And I think we may have had apologies from Shirley Young. I'm not aware of any others, if anyone else has heard it from anybody.
Declarations of interest, please. Has anybody got any declarations of interest? No? Okay. So on to item 3 then. So minutes from the previous meeting. So we're going to confirm the minutes from the meeting of the Police and Crime Panel held on the 26th of July. Seems such a long time ago now, doesn't it? So we'll do them separately, shall we? So do we confirm the minutes of the meetings? We do that by affirmation? Yeah. Anybody got anything? For the first one, the 26th of July.
So, I mean, one of the meetings I'm signed as present, but I wasn't here, which was the one that looked at the thing of the Deputy Police and Crime Commission.
Well, that's the second one we're going to look at, yeah. We're okay with July's one, okay? So moving on to the one that we were just speaking about, with the 31st of July, which was the confirmation hearing for the Deputy PCC. Has anybody got any? Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'm down on that meeting as being absent. I actually attended that meeting, so if that could be corrected, please.
Absolutely. I remember that you were there. So, yeah. Can we get that amended, please? Thank you very much. Anybody else? Everybody happy with those now? By affirmation, yeah? Okay, thank you very much. So, the Chair's announcements. So, thank you for those members who attended the induction briefing session held on the 20th of September. I hope you found it useful. The slides presented at the session have been circulated by email to all the panels and deputies. And the reason I'm doing it online is obviously so that you can all fit it into your day rather than having to just come here for a morning. So hopefully that will work out for everybody's diaries. It certainly does for mine. Precept briefing. So we're coming to that time of year shortly where we're going to be looking and considering the Commissioner's proposed precept. And it is planned that we offer members 2 briefings This is what happened last year, and it seems to work well. So, leading to scrutiny. So, the approach is the first briefing will be on Friday, the 6th of December. And I think we've had them added to the diary yesterday, didn't we? So hopefully you've accepted them. If you haven't, if you could have a look at those and accept them in your diary. So the Chief Finance Officer for the OPCC will explain how the police budget is put together and go through that with us. And the second briefing is on Friday, the 24th of January at 10, and again over Teams. So hopefully most of you will be able to attend. The briefing, the report and the proposed precept level will have been published by then, and this provides an opportunity for the panel members to ask technical questions and understand the proposals prior to scrutiny of the precept and proposed at the formal panel meeting on Friday the 31st of January. Members will have been sent meeting invitations. So I just went through that, so I've accepted mine, so have a look for those. Also yesterday I managed to get on mod.gov, so I've got all the papers now that I can have a look paperless. So if you haven't done that, please have a look at that, and we can let you know how to do that. But you go into mod.gov and then you just add Hampshire County Council and it should just appear in your mod.gov. So that I'm hoping people can go paperless if they can. So we're going on to items. I missed something. Oh, I missed one. Sorry. Item 4. Oh, I thought I was going a bit quick. So, questions and deputations. We've not received any, and there's nobody here. So, apologies for that. And so, item 6, Police and Crime Commissioner's announcements.
Good morning, panel. Nice to see you all. Thank you very much for inviting us to come and give you updates on what's been happening over the last 3 months since our last meeting. I'm going to canter through the updates that have been circulated to you in advance, and then obviously very happy to take any questions. So starting with beginning of August, we launched the new high-speed Defender boat, which is the new capability we have within our police marine unit. It is one of the most advanced vessels now owned by any police force in the country, and is a key strategic asset to the UK, particularly with the risk of drugs and other things coming into the United Kingdom via the water, particularly across the English Channel. So it's a tactical capability. It does comfortably host specialist teams, including armed officers, police dogs, police negotiators, and other public order police officers, should they be needed anywhere on vessels or to support anything that may be water-based. Moving on, I then convened a meeting of our county, district and parish councillors in the New Forest area following significant animal safety concerns that arose from a very large-scale organised pony and trap ride-out. And for those that don't represent rural areas, ride-outs are things through the Gypsy Romy traveller communities that they do organise on an annual basis in certain locations, and we have a couple of those across Hampshire and the Isle of Wight. This did lead to roads being closed without permission. And the police were called, and the Highways Authority through Hampshire County Council and the District Council, the Forestry Commission, the RSPCA, amongst others, were involved. But it was a good public meeting, and I'm grateful to the New Forest District Council councillors who supported. Moving on then, we held an event to host the 1 year anniversary of the Stalking Advocate Support Service that I set up and commissioned last year. A 5-year contract, one of the most comprehensive stalking advocate and perpetrator rehabilitation programmes in the country. We have had national recognition from this as well, particularly through the Ministry of Justice, because the probation service are also involved in it. And the event, the 1 year event, which was covered on local regional TV stations as well, was held in conjunction with Stop Domestic Abuse, who are one of the main providers of the service for us across the 2 counties. Then we invested in the county's I have invested in the county's 4th integrated offender manager houses, an IOM house. This is unique to Hampshire and the Isle of Wight Police Force area only. We're the only part of the country where we do offer premises for people coming out of predominantly Winchester Prison, although it could be from Lewes Prison as well, who are, their criminality, their offending is linked directly to drugs. It can be alcohol, but mostly drugs. They have to apply for a place in one of the properties. They can live there often around 6 months. Some of them are approaching a year, but mostly 6 months. And it helps them to secure accommodation, build their CV. They work in charities, they work in coffee shops, barber shops, and they are learning skills to get them into employment and to help them to turn their life around and to move away from criminality, and particularly to tackle the trauma as to why they started taking drugs, often the trauma of why they started taking drugs in the first place. The IOM house is run by the Society of St James, and I commissioned the service jointly with the probation service. And the other 3 houses are located in Gosport, Portsmouth and Southampton. Then we moved towards the end of August. We had the National Surrender Knife, the Knife Surrender Week, and we had a campaign to encourage people to surrender zombie knives and machetes across the country. And we had a very good take up to and support from the press as well in terms of our campaign across Hampshire and the Isle of Wight. The weapons, became illegal on the 23rd of September this year to produce, sell or own a zombie-style knife or machete. It's unbelievable that wasn't actually illegal already, but it is now illegal, and there were 15 different surrender bins located across police stations in the county to enable people to be able to dispose of those lawfully without enduring any additional risk. Then moving on, I visited a organisation called Gang Warily in the New Forest to see the effectiveness of the ASB task force, so my ASB funding that I give out each year. This is an organisation who'd been successful in securing some monies, and it was a bid put in jointly with Forley Parish Council, and I met with youth leaders, Forestry Commission, and particularly Hampshire and Isle of Wight Fire and Rescue Service colleagues who've been leading the work there to tackle a significant reduction in antisocial behaviour across one of the hotspot areas in the forest. Work has started on the Barclays Bank in the square in Petersfield. You'll remember me briefing you previously that this is one of the 10 police stations and front counter openings that I have announced. The freehold completion by my office was much delayed because of some issues between Barclays and the previous freeholder, which was East Hampshire District Council. But we completed about 3 months ago, and the contractors were ready, poised. We'd already done all of the procurement. They were ready to go. They've moved in. They have now taken all the bank stuff out, and they are now starting work on the conversion works. I released £750,000 Home Office grant specifically to tackle antisocial behaviour in hotspot areas in September as well. And this has been working particularly with local authorities. And I'm pleased to say that I think 9 of the 11 district councils and the unitary authorities did come forward with bids, and we have been able to fund all of the bids that came into us. And so that's meant in some areas we're paying as much as almost £100,000 to pay for community wardens that are employed by the local authority. For 1 year, they are now ASB wardens, or whatever the local authority. I know in Fareham they're called public space guardians, and they are there particularly working just in the ASB hotspot areas. And this is money that was given to me, and I could have spent it on extra foot patrols, overtime for police officers, but I decided that a really effective way to do this, to get something extra that we don't currently have, was by working with local authorities. So I'm grateful to all of you who have supported that initiative. The Chief Constable and I in September opened the new joint, the Blue Light Hub, the new joint fire and police station in Cosham. It was hugely successful. It was opened with obviously colleagues from the Hampshire and Isle of Wight Fire and Rescue Service and formally opened by the Lord Lieutenant Nigel Atkinson. And it's just another example of how between the Fire Authority and myself, we're working together to try and reduce public sector spend, particularly on buildings, and bring those two key blue light services slightly closer together. I was able to announce as well at the beginning of September the results from the Violent Reduction Unit Partnership after it recorded a 4.8% reduction in serious violence since its inception across throughout 23-24. Those are not numbers that we feed into the machine, so to speak, through my office and through the force, but it's the Home Office that does the evaluation, the calculation, then gives us the result back, and that is what they confirmed to us. So I'm pleased to confirm that to you. I responded to the government's prisoner early release scheme. You will have seen this through the media, I'm sure, that because of the prison space crisis, there were 4 national operations stood up to manage the prison space crisis. And it was actually an initiative started by the previous government, but technically delivered by the new Labour government, called SDS 40, which is the Standard Determinate Sentence 40, which means that rather than being released 50% of the way through your sentence for certain offenders, not for everybody, you would be released at 40% of the way through your sentence. And that led to just over 1,700 prisoners across the entire prison estate being released on the 10th of September. There is another date coming up where in total it will be 3,500 people will be released. There is a date, I want to say the 28th of October, and there is another date shortly just after that as well, where more prisoners are going to be released. There are 2 new prisons due to come online in the next couple of months, which will also create 1,700 beds in the male prison estate only, not in the female and youth offending estate, because there is not the bed crisis shortage there. But my role has really been vital through chairing the Hampshire and Isle of Wight Local Criminal Justice Board, as well as the role I was playing nationally, but I'll leave that one to one side for a moment. But certainly locally, to make sure that our probation service, the Crown Prosecution Service, I met with all of our regional directors to ensure that the risk that we were inheriting earlier than otherwise we would have done was managed to the best of the ability. And I have to say the probation service nationally are up against some enormous pressures, but our South Central Probation Service have stood up very, very well, and I'd like to place on record thanks to colleagues from South Central Probation. I opened the new Hampshire, the Hampshire Search and Rescue Centre headquarters in the Meon Valley. Hampshire is a voluntary organisation, a charity, who provide the most incredible support to Hampshire and the Isle of Wight Constabulary. If someone goes missing and they're having to do, extensive land search across fields, covering hundreds of square miles, Hampshire volunteers are specially trained, specialist equipment. If someone goes missing, suspected in a waterway, a river, or in the sea, they help with that. That happens more often perhaps than colleagues may realise. And they are absolutely incredible. They have done 1,100 call-outs to support Hampshire and the Isle of Wight Constabulary since their inception, and it was a real pleasure to be able to go and support them at their opening. On the National 999 Heroes Day, I was able to commend the Constabulary for the brilliant work that the Chief and his team have been able to deliver over the last year. And I'm pleased to confirm that the overall crime levels for Hampshire and the Isle of Wight have dropped by 8% from the 12-month period the year before to the most recent 12-month period. So we have seen an 8% drop from the same period last year, with particularly huge dents made in bicycle theft, public order, burglary, stalking, vehicle crime, sexual offences and robbery. There are a couple of crime types, there are 3 in fact, where they have gone up rather than down, and I'm happy to go into that with colleagues if they want to ask any questions. I was able to support the force's facial recognition trial, and this is where we borrowed facial recognition vans from South Wales Police. They were the first force in England and Wales to pioneer the technology. They started doing this back in 2018, and we were able to bring the vans here for a week period. They were based in Portsmouth and Southampton, and in a part of Southsea as well, Southsea High Street. Again, I'm happy to answer any questions on that if colleagues want some more detail. Ryde Police Station, we have announced the opening of Ryde Police Station, which Councillor Lucioni I know is particularly pertinent to you as it's part of your patch, and we're looking forward to hosting you on the day as one of our VIP guests. We have opened it up to the public, so anyone is welcome to come. It's on October the 25th, and it's part of my ongoing commitment of delivering those 10 new police stations and front counters, as I mentioned earlier. We were able to respond, and in fact we were singled out as a OPCC, an Office of Police and Crime Commissioner, and a police force of exceptional service in the response to the super complaint around stalking that was commissioned following a very serious national complaint brought forward by the Susie Lampler Trust a couple of years ago. The response to that super complaint was published a couple of weeks ago, and in the report it raises concerns around the overall policing response across the country to stalking and how it needs to significantly improve, particularly to lead to less often domestic homicides. Hampshire and Isle of Wight Constabulary was one of the 6 forces that was inspected jointly by His Majesty's Constabulary Inspectorate of Constabulary's Fire and Rescue Services, also College of Policing and the Independent Office of Police Complaints. The report cited the initiatives funded by myself as innovative leadership and the way the force assess victims' needs as good practice and certainly a benchmark for others to learn from. They specifically cited the introduction of the multi-agency stalking partnership, the MASSIP, which is located through the victim care hubs that I introduced, you'll recall, earlier this year. Last year. Moving into October, then my final few comments. Last week, I was pleased to take part in the official Winchester Cathedral Law Sunday event. We've also, in the last week, had the Law Week Festival at Winchester Cathedral, which I have also supported, and thanks to my team who have played, particularly Marisa Charles, our head of comms, who has taken a key part in the preparation of that. I've spoken to community leaders and local government agencies as part of the Clear Hold Build operation in Gosport, which Councillor Minahan will be very aware of. The local community have called their response to the build part of the Clear Hold Build process as hashtag not in our town, and there was a key stakeholder event which I spoke at with the District Commander Marcus Kennedy and with Sam Warren, the Neighbourhoods Inspector, and it was great to have housing associations and so many key partners there at that Clear Hold Build event, and that is what happens in response to serious organised crime in a particular location. So again, happy to answer any questions if colleagues want to know more about Clear Hold Build. I visited the U Trust as part of the launch of a fundraising event they held last week, and this is where they're trying to build new refuges not only for women and children but also for couples and for male victims who may be left destitute because of the ending of a relationship or a circumstance that arises, particularly wanting to support anyone, male and female, who are victims of violence and domestic abuse. And the U Trust are a brilliant charity who I've had the pleasure to be able to support in my 3 years as the Police and Crime Commissioner. I opened the Chief Constable and I jointly opened a new forensic facility last week. It's a state-of-the-art building. It's based at the rear of the Eastleigh strategic headquarters that we share with Hampshire Fire and Rescue. It means that our CSIs, our crime scene investigators, working in high-tech forensic laboratories, really focusing on initial DNA capture, fingerprint analysis, chemical examination, and digital forensics. And these laboratories are really helping the police to quickly and efficiently analyse computers, mobile phones, other digital device, as well as blood samples and other things in the preparation to going off for DNA testing. I was able to launch the Hampshire and Isle of Wight Business Crime Partnership this week. It is National Business Crime Reduction Week across the UK, and I held an event 2 days ago at the John Lewis store in Southampton, and we had over 50 businesses, regional and national directors who attended to really crack down on shoplifting and retail crime, particularly assaults on retail workers across Hampshire and the Isle of Wight. Chair, that is the end of my announcements.
Thank you. Has anybody got any questions on this part?
Oh, so now, just a question, because you mentioned about the police station's opening. Just wondered if you could give us an update on Bitton Police Station. I happened to go past there again the other day, and it just looks a bit messy. So those that were closed, I know that you were talking about getting rid of them. If you could give us an update on that one and others as well, actually, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Craig. So Bitton Police Station, that will probably fall into our phase 2, whether we keep the site or dispose of it. We've had some assessments done around cost for demolition. The key thing is that we need something in that part of Southampton, as you know. I know you know the area very well. But the police station is not in a particularly great state of repair, as you've kind of alluded to. So it's whether or not we do convert or we refurb. The delay in the decision on this one has been around additional custody provision. So you may remember me previously talking to you about how, because of the significant works that are required at the main police station in Southampton, we were looking at whether or not we could put, because we were thinking we were going to need to close custody completely at Southampton Central Police Station for perhaps 8, 10, 12 weeks to do what we needed to do in custody. And so we were looking for backup provisions somewhere else. We looked at Lyndhurst, we looked at Bitton, but of course Bitton would be building it new to be able to then, it would have just delayed things. So that's why it's about moving deck chairs at the moment. So we had the Estates Board this week on Monday. We are still working through those things. I think custody being built in Bitton at the scale at which we were previously anticipating, which would be potentially 18 to 20 cells, it's really difficult on that site because of the Home Office regulations now around space and custody flow, exercise yard, showers, everything that you need to have. We just can't get that number of cells there. We could probably comfortably do 8 to 10, maybe 12, but then for the cost, we wouldn't be able to decant Southampton to that because it wouldn't be big enough. So we're working through it at the moment. Other police stations, so there is a site in Fleet that we are, I've currently had, we're in negotiation with the owners on, because you know I've had a long standing aspiration. I know that obviously Councillor Oliver will be interested in this one, to deliver something in Fleet particularly. We've got the opening of Yateley Front Counter in November, which hopefully you are aware of. And Eastleigh, you know, we're working with your council, as you know, in terms of looking at sites, trying to find something. That aspiration is still there. We really need something in the west of the county. Eastleigh is just on the sort of start of the western provision. It's tricky because of the fact that we need parking for the police vehicles at that location, for the neighbourhoods particularly, and that's probably one of our bigger challenges. So yeah, we are all our eyes and ears to anything that might be coming up, but I hope that gives you some.
Just to come back on that, I
You
just
want
wanted to
something?
say, yes, you are working well with Eastleigh, which is really good. Was at a meeting last night with Matt Paling as well, and we do forums which he attends, which has opened up some really great partnership working. And from those, we've had other bids come in. So thank you for yours that we've had for our rangers in the town centre to tackle ASB. That's been brilliant. And also it came out of that the extra inspectors that you've got at Eastleigh are working really, really well, and it's actually helped with ASB and other issues that we've got in the area. So it's fantastic to have that there. Hopefully we'll get the police station.
Well, thank you for that feedback. It's really welcome.
Councillor Gregory, didn't you want to? Is that, I pronounced your name right?
Yeah, no, it's working, thanks. So thank you very much indeed for the update. One of the questions I have is the ESB wardens. Okay, and in particular, I know that I know that when you looked at assisting, whether they were bid rangers or whatever, you looked at each one individual case. Now, but taking the and of the bid rangers as a particular sort of case in point, because obviously I know them well, who have been subjected to a lot of criticism, right? Okay. So what you effectively did there is you increased their hours, or that's what's happened, right? Now, but they only operate in the town centre, okay, which isn't necessarily where we have most of the ASB, sort of situations. A lot of them are outside the town centre. Now, that led me to question. I said, how do you measure the performance and of these, of this various amounts of money that you're putting in to make an impact on ASB? I mean, what sort of criteria are you using to judge where you're putting putting your money in, and also what sort of performance metrics are you using? Because I think that will be quite interesting over it. There has been a discussion within the Test Valley Borough Council, although that's not necessarily shared with the leadership, in terms of maybe we should be putting some of these wardens into the state, which is what we used to have many years ago. Okay, thank you.
They are very, very good points, actually, indeed. And I think I'm grateful for the question because it will enable me to explain the frustration and the restriction upon how they work. Sadly, not my rules. I wish I could have been more flexible. It is because it's a specific grant given to me by the Home Office, and every Police and Crime Commissioner got one. It was by the last government, not the new government, so the restrictions are not the fault of the existing government, who are looking at some ASB stuff, which I'll come back to momentarily. Because the previous government had an aspiration to reduce antisocial behaviour, to ensure that they could monitor the points you're making around what was it and what is it now, and has this had an effect, and if so, how much of an effect has it had, positive or negative, and was it worth the investment? The Home Office came up with the rules around where so in our allocation, it was £750,000, as I've said, and I could have spent that either on more police officers, as in more overtime, because I can't employ more police officers permanently with that money, because it's a 12-month funding. So I could have either done overtime to increase foot patrols in those ASB hotspot areas. And what the Home Office did is they looked at our crime stats across Hampshire and the Isle of Wight. They said, you've got 15 big hotspot areas, and these are the places that we want you to focus this deterrent. So spend the money in these areas only. And that is really frustrating because, as we know, people that are committing antisocial behaviour don't always stick to that particular high street or that particular park. When you have an effective deterrent, ASB wardens, police officers, whatever, who start policing it, or the community wardens working it, that ASB will then shift to a mile down the road, half a mile down the road. But unfortunately, the way the funding is designed is that it is restricted to the geographical boundary as set by the Home Office with us when it's agreed. So that is why we have that restriction on the areas they can work in, and it's just in those particular areas. In terms of your questions around the performance, how it's monitored, how we know if it's effective. So the crime stats from Hampshire and the Isle of Wight are fed to the Home Office every month. The Home Office collate it, and then at the end of the programme, they will do the evaluation and give it back to me. And at that point, I'm very happy to share that with you, but particularly with the whole panel as well, so that you can see what it was, what impact that 750,000 has had. And the new government have made some quite significant pledges around what they want to do in tackling antisocial behaviour. It's definitely one of the big things the Home Secretary, halving violence against women and girls, halving serious violence, and tackling antisocial behaviour. They are three of the big things she does keep talking about, and I know they're working on some ASB programmes now. I hope it comes with some more flexibility, so we are trusted locally to be able to flex where the response needs to be.
Morning, Commissioner. First of all, can I congratulate you on the amount of work you've done over this period. You must be very, very busy, to say the least. My question really is on the government's early release scheme. Has that actually caused us any problems within Hampshire and the Isle of Wight at all? I just wondered if you've got any figures or any detail on that particular situation.
Well, our share, and actually just to start, I laughed when you said about we've done a lot, because every time we have a police and crime panel and I look at what we've done over the last 3 months, I always say to the team, we've done quite a lot, haven't And this morning I sat over the road at the police station. I was looking through and making some notes. And I went, actually, we've done quite a lot. And Marisa said to me, you say that every time. So it's a bit of a joke when you said that. Have we had any issues? We haven't had any issues here of significance. What we have had is, I think our share of the 1,700 was around 89 people that were released into Hampshire and the Isle of Wight. It may be 79. In that ballpark, prisoners that were released earlier than they otherwise would have been. Some of those, and as you know, the people that were qualifying for the SDS 40, that early release, were people who were not the most serious offenders in the country, but you can still be quite a serious violent person, for example, posing risk to people and have qualified. So what that has done, which has put a lot more pressure on our teams of people who manage the multi-agency public protection teams who are managing those high-risk offenders in the community. And that those teams are made up of both police officers and the probation service. And the probation service particularly are the ones that are caseload managing those people. What has happened is that for a lot of those people, because there are not, the government made an announcement there'll be 1,000 extra probation officers recruited to manage the additional workload, but they are only just starting on that recruitment now, yet we've already got 1,700 additional people out there. So at the moment, the existing probation officers have just got more workload, more cases they're managing. Because of that, if you're out on licence for the second half of your sentence, for a lot of people who are out on licence for the second half of their sentence, there is no real supervision now because there's just not the capacity. What they have had to do is to focus their capacity on the highest risk people that are in communities, either pre-SDS 40 or those who are coming out a part of SDS 40. So I think we've had one offence particularly committed, but you know that there 79, 80 odd people that came out early. It has been really well managed by our probation colleagues and also with some wraparound support from the police as well. So nothing particular to note, really.
Oh, please.
Supplementary?
Just talking about the probation service, I know from my own experience over the years, they've been sort of reorganised and changed and everything else. And obviously they're completely overworked at the moment. I think you mentioned that perhaps there will be more staff, but have you got any more sort of detail on that? Because obviously it's quite important, I think, in all areas.
Yes, I met with the National Probation Lead last week, as it happens, and they are looking to get that recruitment started. I think they have now, the jobs are about to go live. They said they want to get the 1,000 people recruited by the 31st of March 2025. That's a tall order, but there are, I think the country is split into 12 different probation regions from memory. So break the number down, 1,000 by 12. I mean, they're not all going to get an equal share, clearly, but, you know, maybe they will be successful. But, you know, the key thing really is that recruiting people is one thing, but then training up a probation officer takes a good 2 years. So, you know, in some ways in the beginning, it puts additional strain on the existing probation officers because they're having to be tutors to the new probation officers. But ultimately, it's clearly a good thing we're going to have more, but I don't think we'll see the positive impact of that probably over a 12-month period.
Thank you. Anybody else? Councillor Oliver.
Thank you, Chair. I won't mention Fleet Police Station. We'll leave that for later. But you did mention it yourself, so you've opened the door. No, the reason I wanted to ask a question was about you work with a lot of partner agencies, and I've had reason to move a couple of offenders out of remand to Hope Street, and I've been, shall we say, really impressed with the service and the opportunity it's given certain ladies. I think it's about restorative justice and protection. Do you work with Hope Street, and is there any plans for looking at similar facilities elsewhere? Because obviously moving people from the North Hampshire down to Southampton is not the most effective for their social life.
We do work with Hope Street. I'm going to hand over to Kate, who'll give you the brief because she's leading on it. But I did also take the Prisons and Probations Minister to Hope Street in Southampton. For those of you that don't know, it's an all-women facility for people as an alternative to prison or people coming out of prison. But Kate will give us the full update.
Thank you. Yeah. So Hope Street, we have worked with them through conception right through to now, where they're actually operationally taking women and children into the facility. At the moment, I'm on their impact and evaluation board, and we met this week. And the big issue that they're finding is actually getting the message through to all of the magistrates and the judges and everybody else at sentencing points, because they've currently got 7 residents, but they can take up to 24. So, as you will know, there are clearly a lot of female offenders in Hampshire who would be suitable to go to Hope Street, and it's really about getting the message out around what excellent work they're doing there to prove the concept that will then hopefully lead on to more facilities of that nature being put elsewhere in the country and perhaps in the county. But you will know it's fully charity funded as opposed to receiving any kind of government grant at the moment. But they are working with government now to show them how successful the facility can be, but it takes time to build up the numbers to prove the concept.
And just come back on that. I'm a little surprised that they've got capacity, because it was actually on this Monday, we'd had somebody on remand for 3 weeks waiting for a decision from Hope Street for this lady whether she could move in, because she couldn't be released because she was no fixed abode, violent relationship with partner and family. And she had to stay in Winchester for a month, which is very expensive and not good for her mental capacity. So I'm not sure about the process, how speedy that process is of a referral from a magistrate to say, is it a possibility for a release for this lady or with her family? And
as you'll know, there's always a lot of blockers in terms of who signs the final paperwork to allow them to go into that particular facility. So they do have probation co-located in Hope Street, and they do invite all the other agencies in, but it is simply, I think, sometimes the administration behind it that causes a lot of delays to the staff there. The staff are working 24/7 to try and get as many referrals in, and they're finding that the female prison estate as well, prisoners from Hampshire can get moved all over the country now, whereas historically they just had one place, so it's become very difficult to get the right women into Hope Street who are from Hampshire, which is the aim.
Well, as a board member, I'll leave it to you to work out yours.
Thank you.
Leslie.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to firstly say thank you for clear hold build in Gosport. I don't know if anyone wants an explanation of that, but it's a fantastic bit of work in a very small area that's been blighted by serious and organised crime and drug dealing, and really proactive work taken off. So I really appreciate that, not least because I actually live in that ward. Just a couple of things. What training do the ASB wardens receive? And on another subject, you said 89 people have been released into Hampshire. Are you aware if they've all been allocated accommodation, as in not homeless? Thank you.
Thanks very much. So in terms of the training for the ASB wardens, well, obviously they are existing community wardens or, whatever they're called in your individual councils, but they are existing trained community wardens, and so they are members of staff permanently employed by the local authority, repurposed for a 12-month period onto this programme, working within, as Councillor Gregori's mentioned, this restrictive set parameter of an ASB hotspot, which is determined by the Home Office. In terms of the information and the training they're given to be able to comply with the requirements of the funding, yes, they have had training in terms of what the parameter, what the boundary is, the sort of things they should be looking out for, how to capture the data, how to feed it back, and working closely with the policing teams in those areas as well. So there is a set criteria of how the work that they're doing and the particular types of information that the Home Office are wanting to be captured, that is all being done to feed back in. So yes, that's being done, coordinated through my team with the councils and also in conjunction with the police. In terms of the second question, which has escaped me, 89 people being released. Sorry, yes. Well, actually, as you know, there's no requirement when someone is released from prison to provide or help them get any kind of accommodation. However, because there's been such a focus on this 1700 nationally, actually it's been more positive than a normal prisoner being released in normal circumstances. So someone, thankfully, did think ahead to think, well, we need to make sure that the local authorities are prepped. There were multi-agency meetings held with housing teams across councils, with the probation service, the police. So there has been some wraparound support, and I hope that what has happened with trying to support those individuals coming out of prison when they land back in the community that they've come from, or they choose to go and live when they come out. I hope that the more the thinking ahead and the enhanced support they've been getting remains even after STS40 has subsided and we're back to having a more managed prison population, because it has been better actually than normally prisoners being released would get.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Or should we go on to the crime plan? So we're going to receive the Hampshire and Isle of Wight Police and Crime Commissioners draft police and crime plan for 24 to 28. It is part of the duties of the Police and Crime Panel to review and comment upon the Commissioner's Police and Crime Plan. Following the meeting, I will write to the PCC on behalf of the panel to formally provide our comments, including any recommendations or actions agreed as part of our debate today. Donna, do you want to take the lead on that?
Thank you very much indeed. I'd like to start by inviting Karen Dawes from my office to join Kate and I. Karen will be taking us through the slides of the draft police and crime plan for your information, and also taking us through the consultation responses, which I have to say have been amazing. And again, thank you on behalf of all of you, your councils, your press teams who promoted and supported my consultation, which ran for some 8-week period. It may have even been a 10-week period actually. And also to everyone across Hampshire and the Isle of Wight that took part. But thank you very much. I'll now hand over to Karen.
Thank you very much, and good morning to Police and Crime Panel members. So first I'll give you some headlines from the consultation which helped to inform the Commissioner's plan, followed by an overview of the draft plan itself. I won't go into the granular detail of the plan, as I know that you've all received copies, but this provides an opportunity to familiarise yourself with the headline content. So Police and Crime Commissioners must produce a police and crime plan setting out their priorities, and in developing the plan, they're required to seek the views of the public through a public consultation. The consultation was launched on the 10th of June, and it was open for 10 weeks. And it was based upon the election manifesto, the views of the local people, and the experience of the Commissioner during her first term. We had over 10,400 responses, which is very high for a police and crime plan public consultation. I'll mention some of these other points highlighted on this slide later in my presentation. There are 2.3 million people living in Hampshire and the Isle of Wight. Southampton, Portsmouth and the New Forest had the highest response rate, and there was a fairly even split on gender. In terms of age, 65 to 74-year-olds had the highest response, and we reviewed returns on a weekly basis and adapted our approach throughout the 10 weeks so that we could be proactive in targeting certain demographics. For example, to try and increase responses from young people, we targeted the consultation through the Youth Commission and the Youth Independent Advisory Group members, plus social media. There was much support for the proposed priorities, with the greatest being more police officers, tackling shoplifting and retail crime, and reducing serious violence. 92% of respondents also supported more local named bobbies. Those completing the survey also had the opportunity to highlight other areas which were important to them, and those are listed on the right, and all of these are included in the draft police and crime plan. Some questions were also asked around trust and confidence, including the extent to which the public feel the police are doing a good job, how safe they feel, and to what extent they trust their local police. The police and crime plan includes the local priorities, but commissioners also need to have regard to the strategic policing requirement when issuing their plan. And these are specified by the Home Secretary, and they recognise aspects of policing where a cross-boundary response is needed to respond to wider national threats. And they're shown in the middle. So VORG, violence against women and girls, that was added most recently in 2023. And just as a point of note, for serious organised crime, it includes 3 main themed areas of drugs, fraud and organised immigration crime. The strategic policing requirement is intended to support chief constables and commissioners to plan, prepare and respond to national threats and ensure that the force's national responsibilities are fulfilled. Apologies. And the national policing priorities are shown there in the column on the right, and these apply to a greater or lesser extent to all 43 forces across the country. And I've just included that to explain why, when you see the draft police and crime plan, it includes all of those priorities that are listed up there. I'm now going to go on to an overview of the actual plan itself. So I'll just pause first on the contents page, where you can see reference there to the local priorities, the strategic policing requirement, and the national policing priorities, which I explained earlier. The plan starts with a foreword from the Commissioner, followed by the Chief Constable. And there is then an introduction to Hampshire and Isle of Wight Constabulary, brought to life through some key headlines of the daily demands of the force. There is then a section on demographics of Hampshire and the Isle of Wight. And then the Commissioner goes on to introduce the 6 local priorities: police visibility and engagement, business and retail crime, crime in rural areas, road safety, serious violence and antisocial behaviour. Each section that then follows relates to those 6 local priorities, and each starts with an explanation about why that area is considered to be so important and what the Commissioner will do over the next 4 years. So these are those 6 local priorities in that section. The plan then moves on to the strategic policing requirement and those national threats set by the Home Secretary. It's the same format as before, starting with an introduction, followed by what will be achieved over the next 4 years. And the strategic policing requirement: national threats, violence against women and girls, terrorism, serious and organised crime, national cyber incident, child sexual abuse, public disorder and civil emergencies. And they are all listed here, as I said, with an introduction and then what will be achieved over the next 4 years. We then move on to the national policing priorities. So these apply to a greater or lesser extent to all 43 forces, and so are different to those national threats under the strategic policing requirement, which require that cross-border response. There is then a section on collaboration, followed by the criminal justice system and the reciprocal duty of the Commissioner and other criminal justice agencies to work together to provide an efficient and effective criminal justice system. And there is also reference in this section to the important role of community safety partnerships. There are then 2 sections relating to funding, the first on commissioning and the second on value for money, with a budget report. And then we move on to oversight and scrutiny, and how under the Police Reform and Social Responsibility Act 2011, the Commissioner is responsible for the totality of policing in her area, and how she will hold the Chief Constable to account for securing the maintenance of an efficient and effective police service. The final section in the draft plan is about public engagement and all of the ways that that will be achieved during the Commissioner's second term. And that concludes my overview of the draft police and crime plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Donna, do you want to come in? No, that's go to questions.
Thank you very much. Yep, over to questions.
I'll open up to the floor first. Councillor Gregory.
Yeah, thank you very much indeed for that. So I'll just make a number of comments. I thought that having an armed response team for the policing at a glance was not helpful in terms of projecting what our police is trying to do. And you saw that from your survey. What people are interested in is local police things. Now, having been involved in the higher end of policing, which, you know, a lot of my officers were armed, I would rather that we had a softer approach and try and gain the public thing. I think it was just a perception thing, and it came quite early on as well. And when I saw that they had the stuff with night vision, I thought, well, no. So anyway, so that's that. Moving on to the actual plan and the substance of it, I was somewhat disappointed, in fact, more than disappointed with the level of detail, okay, that you've got. I would have expected to see some properly constituted SMART objectives. They may well be in other underlying plans or action plans underneath that. But there's a problem that we're going to, from my perspective, having been here last year, there's a danger of repeating the mistakes of last year, where we started off with a very, very nebulous plan, and maybe I'm being too critical, but then you actually had the detail, and the detail came out, sort of over the thing in there. And the problem with that, and that particular approach, is it makes scrutiny of both the Office of the Police and Crime Commission, in other words you, but also the police, virtually impossible, because there are no hard targets that we're aware of. And I was playing this game with some of my local residents, and who haven't read the plan, obviously, but asking them, so what does this mean? Well, it doesn't mean anything to them at all. And from my perspective, I can't really do my job if the plan is so vague. Okay, and I've got to question why I'm here. Why, if the plan's not vague? And I think what we need to do, and I'm sure you've got some level of detail underneath that, I think that needs to be there. You're already this year carrying out initiatives which fulfill some of these things that you've said that you're going to do. But holding people to account and challenge them, for me, is not an objective. Okay. Now, I mentioned this to Kate as well, and I know she had a really good answer. I'm being very collective, were criticised over serious organised crime, okay, which is one of my areas of great interest. And I think it's important, quite rightly, Kate made the point, this lack of intelligence function did not help. But I think we need to tease out that level of detail in there. Some of it may well be confidential, so it might not be relevant for open, publication. Because there are progress is being made, but it's not being shown. Okay. Thank you very much.
Donna, do you have something to?
Well, you may be surprised that I actually agree with you in terms of, not that I think that the plan is not very good. I think it's a good plan, but I do agree with the points that Councillor Gregory is making, that it's a bit, everything appears quite vague. And that is by de facto of the way that the legislation is written, unfortunately. So if we work right the way back to my role in holding the police to account, in crunching those, what's happening with crime levels, they're going up or down, what are your charge rates, what's your timeliness in terms of report to charge to court to sentence, the part I play in holding the criminal justice system to account for the timeliness of HMCS to not have crack trials, to what percentage of cases are entering a guilty plea or a not guilty plea, gap courts through magistrates and through Crown courts. The way that my job is constituted and the way that this panel's work is constituted of holding me to account is vague. And as a consequence of that, what you're sensing, what I'm picking up from you, is that you are wanting more detail, more specifics, more everything else. Now, yes, that work happens in the system, but if you have a look at the guidance that is set through legislation and then through procedure from the Home Office to a Police and Crime Commissioner of the requirements that have to go into a police and crime plan, because there are certain things that must be in there, like covering financial scrutiny, like covering violence against women and girls, like covering serious and organised crime, like covering both the strategic policing requirements and the national policing requirements. There are certain components that must be in the police and crime plan. But the Home Office do not want us or encourage us to put the granular level of detail that you are seeking in that. The purpose being, they want those documents to be high-end to enable the public to be able to understand what it is we are trying to achieve in terms of priorities. And that is what they are trying to achieve in making police and crime commissioners write police and crime plans. So they're not designed to be a very complex strategy document that has lots of appendices with targets, and that's not how they are set up. I'd be very happy, or you could do this yourselves anyway through your support team, to have a look at the other police and crime plans across the country and have a look at mine last time, which got recognition for being accessible, user-friendly, because we had videos embedded, as you remember previously, because I wanted to try and make it accessible, particularly for people who can't read and write. There are so many people involved in the criminal justice system that cannot read and write still, and that's often one of the reasons why they're involved in the criminal justice system. So I do actually understand the points you're making. I understand that it is not necessarily giving you, as you're sat here, the level of detail that perhaps you might want, as you say, to fulfil your role. But if you look at then moving on to the purpose of police and crime panels and the way the legislation is written in terms of your work and how the government of the day wanted you to oversee the system, it's not designed again to be that granular. And I agree that it probably could do with a big rewrite, to be honest with you, and that would then make all of our jobs easy. But as far as the requirements on me and my team to write a police and crime plan that is accessible for all, that's a high-level document that explains what I will do over the next 4 years, which is the primary purpose of it, that is what we have done, and it is absolutely comparable, if not one of the best in the country.
I've listened very carefully to what Donna said, but thank you. I mean, I did have a discussion at my last party conference, because I'm a Liberal Democrat, with people who had been PCCs and this whole question. So there's certainly a difference of view over, what the role is, but also that, how we do scrutiny best. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Oliver.
Thank you. I won't go over the point Councillor Gregory made, because I was going to make the same one. It's very difficult to scrutinise a document without any metrics in it. And I take your point that a lot of this is legislation driven, but there are some things that you do which are not in the legislation, like numbers of police officers or stations. And I think it will be helpful on those instances. Even if it's not in the crime plan, is that when we get to the discussion of something like the precept, I'm sure you'll be coming for more money. Yeah, I'm absolutely guarantee, I would think, you're going to come for more money. But without metrics saying it's going to be more than one extra officer in 4 years or one extra counter in 4 years, it's very difficult for us to judge value for money. So I think certainly for the precept, I think we would appreciate more data if we go through it. I've got a second one afterward.
Well, here's the thing, Councillor Oliver. I'll only come for more money if you do, and if you don't, I won't. So we'll leave it like that, shall we, in terms of your council? No, I'm joking. I'm being slightly facetious there. Right, so I should have said, sorry, in answer to your question. So whilst this is the high-end document that says encompassing, clearly what there will be coming in terms of a lot more detail from you is then the delivery plan of how we're going to deliver all of the I wills on each page. And if you remember before when Pete Jones was here and he was my police and crime manager manager who was delivering the programme for me, you'll remember the very detailed level of oversight that you had going into the pledges, the how we're going to do it. So these are the I wills. I am going to reduce antisocial behaviour across Hampshire and the Isle of Wight. That's a very broad statement, isn't it? What you're after is the how, where, how quickly, whatever. So that's the sort of stuff that will come in the detailed plan that will sit behind this, and that's where you will have the working group to give you those briefings. You better work through that in more detail with us, and then you'll get the updates here at each panel as well. So whilst this is a very high-end document, the how we're going to do that stuff and our progress of that, you will clearly get a lot more information of, and I hope that that will go some way towards addressing the need that you're seeking.
Do carry on.
Yeah, thank you. I think that's the document we'll be scrutinising, not your overview. My second point was on one of the national priorities is cybercrime, because some of us were lucky enough to go and visit the unit that you held, which looked like to be in a couple of porter cabins, and it didn't look like GCHQ when we walked in there, and it looked quite a Cinderella service. This is no, shall we say, criticism of the officers in there, but it didn't look as though it looked to be a priority with their facilities. And when you look at the data now that's coming in, that 40% of all crime is online, and it's one of the biggest issues, are there going to be any plans in your plan to get more support for the cyber unit within Hampshire and the Isle of Wight?
Thank you. Yes, so the new forensic capability building that I mentioned in my updates that the Chief Constable and I opened a couple of weeks ago, 2 weeks ago in fact, they are in there. So we've got people working in there on this work as well. But also the government have been looking at whether or not it's right that cybercrime, because it's so specialist, whether or not it's right that individual forces do this, or whether or not it should be a nationally coordinated function, a bit like countering terrorism. So it's one of the things, the Home Secretary's kicked off a piece of policing reform. There are a number of round tables that are being held between now and I think probably the end of January, February time, when a new policing reform white paper will be coming out. And one of the things that there's probably about 12 different work areas that have been captured. One of them is about whether or not there should be national coordination of this. And I do actually think it's one of the areas that would make a lot of sense to be done nationally. I don't actually like centralisation that much. I think the closer you can get the people that are helping you in whatever public service it is to the nucleus of the people that need the help, the better. But in this one, it's so specialist. You know, it's a very competitive field when you're working in cyber detection, cyber fraud, when you're looking at those sorts of people that do go and work for GCHQ, that often get plucked from universities, that are some of the, brightest brains in the country in terms of analytics and those sorts of things. Is it realistic to think that we can get that level of skill set replicated across 43 police forces in England and Wales? If you then extend Police Service Northern Ireland and Police Scotland, the problem gets bigger by a third again. So to be honest with you, I probably do support the government's serious look at coordinating that centrally more than it already happens. There is already a National Cyber Resilience Centre, and there are also regional cyber resilience centres which our Chief Constable has an operational oversight of, because the 4 chiefs the 5 chiefs I should say actually in our region all have staff that are in those. So we do have some specialist teams probably looking at greater coordination, but we have got improved facilities for them now.
Can I ask a question, please? When can we see that action plan? Because we're going to talk about the work plan after this, and I think that's really important that we see that so we can get some really good work in place. When will we see that?
That will be for the next meeting and for the meeting in preparation of that as well. So you'll be given that brief. The document is being worked on right now to sit underneath this. So it's all part of the scheduled work programme that we have moving forward.
January. Any chance of having it before then?
Thank you. Good morning. A lot of what you can do and will do is going to be determined by government funding. You did touch on it earlier, and I hope that you've had some reassurance that the funding streams will continue, because I know, speaking firsthand from Fareham, the difference that it has made. So thank you for that, Donna. Particularly, I know the funding for the Serious Violence Reduction Unit, that potentially is going to come to an end. And I know, again, from the Community Safety Partnership and our partnership action groups that we have monthly, that's brought together the habitual knife crime. So I just really, obviously, I know it's a bit finger in the air moment, but do you have any views on funding from new government? Thank you.
Yes, thank you for the question. And I think just to clarify for people, so the serious violence, the Violent Reduction Unit funding is in total just over £2 million. 1.4 million of that comes to me as Police and Crime Commissioner to support the strategic needs assessments across all of the areas, all of the community safety partnerships, pull that together, and to commission services for the reduction of serious violence amongst 14 to 25-year-olds. In addition to that, I get given another £650,000, which is what takes it just over the 2 million, which is called GRIP funding, which is specifically for police officers that work in the areas where we have the worst levels of serious violence. We have 10 dedicated police officers that work across in what we call our violent crime task force, and they all sit within my office and are coordinated through an inspector and a sergeant in my office, obviously employed by the Chief Constable. So the funding, as you say, comes to an end on the 31st of March. It's been 3-year funding for violent reduction units. We are one of 20 forces across the country that have a violent reduction unit. Not all police forces have them, so less than half have them. And they are the biggest forces, clearly, with the most levels of serious violence. And our biggest centres for serious violence in the county won't surprise you at being Southampton, Portsmouth and Basingstoke. But there have been some great work has been done in terms of, as you say, Joanne, working with the local authorities, probation service, and others. Our charities are brilliant, and we couldn't do it without them. So what do I think is going to happen? Well, I don't think the Violent Reduction Unit funding will continue as is. However, I do think that the Home Secretary is very focused on wanting to reduce serious violence. They have made that commitment to reduce to half serious violence over the next decade. That's a tall order, and therefore they will continue to fund, if you want my opinion, in some way. I don't think they're going to call it violent reduction units because that was a previous Conservative government initiative. But do I think the mission of what was being, has been achieved through those VRUs, will that continue? Yes. They've set up something called, now you'll remember we had the Safer Streets funding, rounds 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. It's a coincidence that there is a new government mission called Safer Streets. It's not that Safer Streets funding programme, so put that to one side for a minute. But a Safer Streets Commission has been set up by the government. They had this planned before winning the general election, and it spans multiple government departments. And because it spans multiple government departments, it's coordinated through the Cabinet Office, which is obviously the right thing to do, under the leadership of a minister called Pat McFadden. So the government departments that are involved in reclaiming our streets, making our streets safer, Department for Education, DCLG, Home Office, MOJ, Health, there's a whole load of government departments involved. And it's really about starting, you've heard me talk to you before about trauma, about long-term prevention, about preventing rather than cure, when it comes to criminalise young people. This is what this is trying to span, from health visitors, social workers, right the way through. Now, there is no specific detail in any of this yet from the government on how they're going to deliver their Safer Streets mission, but the director in the Home Office, who is a senior civil servant, who's been appointed to lead it for the Home Office, for the Home Secretary, is a man called Richard Clark, who I have met, we're just waiting for the information to come out through the Cabinet Office on exactly how they are going to coordinate several government departments to see the long-term reduction in habitual knife carriers, for example, and the scourge that we have across all of our communities on knife carrying, on drug-related harm, on gang culture. Those are the sorts of things that I really want to see a significant dent in moving forward, and that's the work that I'm going to be continuing to do when I come to some of the pledges I'm making around, reducing reducing serious violence in Hampshire and the Isle of Wight, you know, my A&E navigators that I pay for, all of those programmes that I've currently got going on to try and significantly reduce. And that's the granular level of detail you'll get in the document that sits underneath this one, which, if you remember, when you used to see all the lines of all the different pledges on the screen and whether they were red, amber or green rag status, that's the sort of stuff that you'll get in the more detail underneath this high-end document.
Councillor Cartwright.
Oh, sorry.
Right, there we go. Thank you, Chair. I suppose my view on the sort of the plan is, I mean, this is the fourth one I've seen actually over the years, and I suppose one could level the same criticism on all of them. But you know, I think your explanation is extremely helpful, and I think the problem also is with any plan is that you can go into the nth detail, but hopefully the public are going to see this plan and they'll be completely confused with it. So it needs to be a sort of document that can be read by anybody and everybody. But for me, the actual measurement of the plan is obviously the delivery plan that you're going to come out with, which I think is you know, the way we as a committee move forward. I've just got a couple of questions from the plan, the plan actually. One is the recruitment of police officers, and you won't be surprised at me asking that question, of course. And the other one is your relationship with the community safety partnerships, having been the chairman of one for many, many years. So if positive answers to those, that'd be very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. So on the police recruitment, so you'll remember that the 650 police officers was achieved by March of last year. That's why in beginning of April this year, I announced the funding for the additional 75, which means that with those, that will get us up to plus 725 more than we had in January 2020. That is still going to put us behind where we were in 2010. Not by many, we're talking like 20 or 30 officers, but technically we're still not there. And I say that because I think almost every other force in the country now have exceeded their 2010 policing numbers, apart from us and well, I know definitely one other. I think it's Cleveland. Is it just us in Cleveland? Yeah. So we are one of two forces, and look at how much more many officers I've recruited than we were actually given the money for. If I'd not been ambitious in pushing that, we would be the worst in the country. We would be even behind Cleveland. And Cleveland are a very small force. We're a big force. So you know, I say that because I want to quantify how many officers were cut previously, which is why the public in this county have really felt people not, you know, police not turning up to shoplifting, not getting adequate response to burglaries. That has been the consequence of all of that. Okay, and I'm trying to do what I can now since I've been in post to redress that. And I know the Chief and I are absolutely at one on this. And like I've said to you before, over the last 18 months or so, my assessment is that I think we need to get to 1,000 more than we were in January 2020 as quickly as we possibly can. So with the funding I've put in the budget room right now, that gets us to plus 725. I've just started the budget over the last couple of weeks, the new budget, which clearly you will see in January and have the training in December, as you said. I'm hoping that we will have the money for 50 police officers, but if we could get to 100, I mean, the problem is that even if I do put the money in for 100, it's actually recruiting them, plus recruiting those that are retiring and leaving as well. So, you know, there will be probably 125 police officers that retire over the next year, maybe more, plus then the net increase of trying to recruit the new ones too. So it's a constant hamster wheel, like the learning and development and recruitment teams are constantly on this cycle, and it is full on. There is a police group that's set up, which is a board which is looking at the recruitment every month. It meets to look at where the numbers are, what's going on, how many people are in the pipeline, how many people are past vetting, failed vetting, blah, blah, blah. And Kate and I have an accountability board with the Chief Constable and the Deputy Chief Constable, where we hold them to account on these things and say, look, you know, what are the numbers, how's it going? Sometimes you'll get a month where it just so happens, because of 30 years ago, how many they recruited in that month, that you've got, you know, on average, I think there are 30 leavers a month, but 1 month it could be 50, and suddenly that has an effect on the numbers. And I'm then going, hang on a minute, why have we had a higher drop than normal? So these things are being mapped through the police force performance team all the time, the data performance team all the time, and Kate and I have really tried to encourage them to be looking not just 1 step ahead, but 3, 4, 5 steps ahead of what's coming down the line, not now, but next year and the year after, so that they can start to map their recruitment workflow plan as well. So that's the recruitment issue. So we're getting there. I'm working on the numbers now. Now, in addition to that, before I come on to your second point, the Home Secretary, you all know, has made the commitment around 13,000 more police officers, specials and PCSOs. It's not just 13,000 police officers. We don't know what the split will be between specials, PCSOs and police officers. I mean, specials are truly amazing. And I did meet a special this week who has given us 40 years service into Hampshire and the Isle of Wight Constabulary. He is a retailer who was at the business retail meeting a couple of days ago that I mentioned, and it was really good to meet him. And if you want to see who he is, there's a picture of him on my Twitter account. But you can't always, we cannot say that you must be on duty. They are volunteers, so it's good to have them, and they do an amazing job. But there is there's a core number of police officers that you just need to have, that you can definitely know will be on duty, and the chief can direct them to go wherever he needs them to go in the county. So in terms of the recruitment, it's ongoing. We want to get to that 1,000 as quickly as we can. I'm hoping the Home Secretary is going to give us some money to be able to employ more police officers. So if I can find the money for 50 locally, perhaps the other 50 or so may be coming from a Home Office pot. Although the last time I met with her, she said to the 10 of us that were in the room, the police leaders, there is no extra money. We've got to find it in our existing coffers. That's a tall order, as you will all know from your own budget management. The second part you made was around the relationship with CSPs. So really, really key, really vital. I think there's been an improvement in the regularity of the meeting with some of our CSPs. Some CSPs are very, very good. And I know that Trevor, you were previously the deputy leader of Fareham. So your CSP, and through Narinda Baines and the coordination across the district CSPs, you are very good. Some councils, of course, for financial reasons, because they're small or because they've had other competing demands, have not had the regularity or the officer support, professional officer support, dedicated ring fence to their CSPs over the recent years. That is not a criticism at all. I completely understand, having been a council leader. It's just an observation. That does make our job a bit more difficult, but where I've been able to lend that additional professional support through my office in terms of helping that small CSP create their strategic needs assessment to make sure they're being able to hit their serious violence duty requirements, for example, we've done that through my VRU in my office and through the team that work for me under Kate. So yes, we have a really key relationship. The CSP output across Hampshire and the Isle of Wight, I think, is getting better. Still some way to go. And I know that the CSP review has been going on through the Home Office over the last 12 months or so. And I think we're looking at the conclusion of that coming out very soon. And one final comment, there is a new piece of legislation that's due to be, white paper will be consulted on, due to be published in the next couple of weeks, called the Crime and Justice Bill. And I expect some of these outcomes around CSPs and other bits and pieces perhaps to be in the new Crime and Justice Bill. So the consultation on the white paper will happen between now and probably Christmas. And then they're looking at laying that new piece of legislation down, or amendments to existing pieces of legislation, probably in March, I think.
Thank you, Di. Anybody else? Tonya.
Ladies first.
Thank you. It's just about this action plan, really. I think it's really important that we need to see it. And just having a look at the work plan, our panel work plan, this is all supposed to come to us in January for the precept, the action plan that fits in with this to make sure that we're doing everything properly. And I think it's a real shame, because we are the voices out there on the public that are blowing the trumpet of the police and the Police Crime Commissioner's office and all those types of things. And I must say that I actually, with Luigi, think, why am I sat here? I can't do my job properly about scrutinising and feeding in. And we've spoken about the CSPs and how we work really good in partnership and all those types of things. And I think this is an opportunity for the police and yourself to be saying, look at what we do, look at how we're protecting the members of the public. But we can't scrutinise that properly because it's all going to come in a really busy meeting where we're going to be looking at it and thinking, is this a proper action plan to be able to say, yes, we understand, members of public, you're going to be paying more out of your pocket, but actually it's for valid reasons. You know, in the past I've been saying I can't support the precept because we're not getting that. We're still not getting it, and I think I've been saying that for about 5 years now. And it is, what's the point of us sitting here? We're supposed to be helping each other. We're supposed to be constructive in our comments. We're supposed to be here blowing the trumpet for safety of our residents. And I just think, you know, it's missing an opportunity. If we had that before, and I totally get that there are things that you can't report because it goes on to print and then, you know, it might get out in the public domain. But being able to feed some of that back to us would be a real opportunity for us to then be able to sit here and say, yes, we get it, we support you, and it is worth the money for members of the public. At the moment, I don't think we can do that. And like Luigi, I'm sitting dogs at the moment, and one of them slipped its lead and drove me nuts this morning and had me running around for half an hour. And I'm thinking, I really must get to the meeting. And then I kind of sit in the car thinking, why? This isn't here to be able to do my job properly. So, you know, I just think that we could be working better together if we get more information that we have time to digest and work out those questions to then report back to our members of public.
I think that's really, you know, clear feedback, good feedback. I really understand that. I think there's two things probably that would be helpful. One, perhaps if through, you know, obviously the Home Office pay for the business support that you have here on the panel, go through all of the other OPCCs, go through all of their meetings, have a look at them online. They're all televised. If you see a way that it's being presented that you think that's really good, let us, because we've done that piece of rationalisation ourselves, and we feel that the information that we were putting up on the screen, you had so much detail about how every line in my previous police and crime plan was delivered, about what we were doing, about how it was on track, the 101 stuff. You know, we went from being one of the worst 101 performing forces in the country. We're now top 3. I think we're 3rd and have been consistently for the last 3 months. So we've gone from being one of the worst to one of the best. That's because of the feedback that you had given me. We brought you back. We explained how we're opening a new call centre. I explained about how we were recruiting over 110 to 15% of our headcount in that area. I explained about how I was putting more money into it, more jobs being created, about the recruitment agencies we're appointing. You know, whilst these are high level lines in here, and I get that, the detail of what you were getting in the delivery of my previous police and crime plan was not, as you say, about this document. It was actually about the document that sits underneath it, which is specifically designed for all of you. You had an input into how it looked and felt, into the kind of level of detail you wanted in there. We did make some improvements because of some really good feedback that came particularly from both of yourselves, and that's very welcome. But I'm not saying it's perfect. So if there is a way that you would like it, you know, laid out, if you see another OPCC around the country that's doing something that you think is really, really good, let us know. We'll go and have a look. We'll have a chat to them. We can get them to send us across their frameworks. We can have a look at how they lay it out. And I do get that what you want to see is the hows of this. Because this document, I finished, the team drafted it, the consultation closed end of August. We've done the evaluation. We've then looked at what the priorities are, which were broadly around we thought they'd be. So we had our head analyst, Tash, was then working through it. She wrote the report. She sent it across to us beginning of September. The comms team then drafted this with Karen. I then went through it with a red pen about 2 weeks ago. It was finalised about a week ago. It then went back. Laurie then came back from a holiday. He then laid it all out. So this has been happening in very real time. What will happen, because we are waiting for your support of this today, if you do decide to give us your support, we will then go away and then start working on that detailed document that sits underneath this. It genuinely doesn't exist yet. If it did, we could have brought it here today, but you will have that for your next meeting. And as Pete used to do, by taking you line by line by line by line through every single one of the areas that I am pledging to improve or do something on, Karen will be doing that for you and be taking you through a training session on how it will work. And actually, we think that the plan that the IBOS, the Improvement Business Oversight document, the framework that Pete created previously, we thought worked well. We had really positive feedback from the panel towards the end of the delivery of the previous plan, where we had managed to achieve everything over that period, and some of them genuinely did take us 2 or 3 years to get to. So we, I've got pledges in here at the moment of things I'm saying that I want to do. I don't know how I'm going to deliver it yet, because we haven't got there, and I've got 4 years to do this. So whilst I appreciate that January does feel like it's some time away, we have got 4 years as well. It's more of a long distance rather than a sprint at the moment. I only had 3 years previously, and that did go very quickly. So I appreciate we need to get on and make improvements for the county and make it safer. In terms of the frustration around, like, why are you coming to these meetings? What are you really doing? Like, I actually completely understand. That's what I said. I agree with the points that were made by Councillor Gregori previously, but that's probably where you do need to write to your MPs and get them to feed into, or write to the Home Office, write to the Home Secretary, because they are the governors of how this panel holds me to account, how I then hold the police to account on improvement delivery. So I hold them to account for everything that you would want me to do, and then you have to check that I'm doing what I'm doing. And that's the support bit. And I really do appreciate you saying that. Thank you, because it is important as well. So the legislation is vague, and that I don't think helps any of us. I don't want it to be vague either. I think being more specific is actually a lot more helpful, but that's not the way it's currently worded, which is why there's then various different interpretations. But I really want to support you all. I really want to work with you. I really do value the support of the panel, and how you can make life a lot better by sharing and promoting the things that we're doing.
Thank you, Dana. I was just wondering, on the 6th of December, when we do the precept, could we not touch on it a little bit, maybe? Just informally on that? Would that be?
We could maybe do a training session on what the framework is again for those newer members who didn't do the other stuff with Pete before. So you could see, we can maybe bring you one of the old ones, and then whatever we've built of the new one, we could show you then too. But like I say, there are things in here I'm saying I'm going to do, and I genuinely don't know how we're going to deliver that pledge yet, but we're working on that. So it's not like I've been re-elected, come up with these pledges, listened to what the public have said, and then gone, right, I already know the 80 different delivery lines of exactly how I'm going to do it, because I genuinely don't yet. And I didn't at the beginning of my last one either. And in fact, there were still things that were coming through partway through that I was going, oh yeah, we could do that. And because government programmes change, funding changes, local priorities change. Yeah.
You're saying it's an organic process through, isn't it? Yeah. Did you want to?
I think that is, I think it is really helpful, because my supplementary question was, surely you should know already, if that's your plan of where you're going, sort of how you're going to get there. So for you to say, no, you don't know how you're going to get there yet, that is quite helpful to understand. But it might be helpful, if you don't want to put things in print, to have kind of a briefing session where, it's, but I mean, just put it in the diary moving forward anyway. Hopefully we can make most of those that go in, but, just put out the updates of things, maybe in your chair's announcements, updating us in those as well with the detail that's in there. It would make it easier. But my concern is, like you said yourself, Pete took 2-3 years on some of the things that come in. It's a 4-year plan. And when it's taken 3 years, you've then got to try and work out whether it worked, what didn't, how we can change it. And that, for us, is trying to feed that back into you. Like you say, things that work, things that change. It would make our job a lot easier, which in turn makes yours, because we're working well with you then.
Kate's just made a recommendation, if that's okay. We did evaluate the last plan, so perhaps we could bring that back on the 6th of December as well, and share with you the evaluation of the last plan, so you could see what we looked at for the evaluation.
Is that possible to send out before, so we can have a look at it and then raise any questions for the 6th? Maybe send that out the week before? That'd be brilliant, thank you.
Definitely.
I like that way forward. That would be excellent. Yeah. Any more before we... On what?
Yes. Thank you very much indeed. I mean, I totally agree with what you say. Our job here is really to help you. I think that when you compare the plan to a marathon rather than a sprint, I think the key thing from my perspective is that you cannot afford to start a marathon by walking. And that's what sort of worries me. Having said that, anytime we ask you for the underlying details on this, you by and large give it to us, unless you haven't, and you'll be quite open about it. So I think from my perspective, and I'm sure it's shared by many, the delivery plan's quite call it what you like, is quite key. And there was certainly, last time around when Pete Jones was doing his thing, that there was a pressure for more detail as we come along. But I think the key thing for you is that, okay, it's 4 years, but we can't see the completion, in year 4. Okay, and there was an issue about red, amber, green allocations, which I did not like. Okay, because anyway, and I think a lot of it is when you monitor progress, and that's why it's important to have some delivery plan, is actually to be quite clear what the rules of the game are. Okay, because it might be green to you, but it's not green. It's not green for me. But why? And so on and so forth. Okay, I do think it's useful to do a briefing every so often. Maybe 1 page. I mean, the recruitment of police officers is a classic case in point. I mean, as you quite rightly said, we should be putting pressure on our MPs, even if they're no longer in government, to try and fix things or chivvy them along over it. Now, the final question I was going to ask you, as opposed to blabbing on about things, the central government funding review, which is actually quite critical for Hampshire. What's happening to that? Because the last time you said, well, the Home Office has started to think a way through it. The big issue was no shortage of money, but I'd hate to see Hampshire penalised because it's treated as a county force, yet it's got airports, ports, or some really large cities as well. And anyway.
Thank you very much indeed. Yeah, the central government funding review. It's so frustrating. As you know, and particularly for newer colleagues, we are one of the worst funded police forces in the country. In our MSG, our most serious group, and there are 6 or 7 in our MSG. If you compare us to Durham, who are smaller than us, but in our MSG group, for example, they receive, or they did, it was as the figure as of 2 years ago, £44 million a year more than we do. 3 million quid gives you 50 cops. So you can imagine what we could do with £44 million. And we would be at that 1,000 that I want police officers and beyond. So it is a real concern for the Chief Constable, for me and everyone that's working, supporting us. It's a point that the Chief Constable raised with HMIC just last week again, as did Olivia Pinckney repeatedly. I know that she addressed the panel about that as well. So just to recap very, very quickly, the previous government recognised, a bit like the Barnett formula, it's just called the police funding formula in the Home Office. So, but it's equivalent to the Barnett formula, that it was outdated and it needed updating quite significantly. We pushed for that to happen. 2021, it was agreed it was going to be reviewed. It was then reviewed. Bristol University were appointed by the university to do the academic creating the algorithms and the detail of what would make the changes to the formula. There was a huge consultation carried out. All police and crime commissioners, chief constables, our CFOs, everyone fed into people like us. Oh, we need to have a seasonality factor in there. We need to have a better rural crime index in there, so that those of us that had large rural areas and urban areas and a tourist economy, Devon and Cornwall get over 1 million visitors a year, and that creates a lot of additional crime and risk for them. So those things are weighted quite lowly in the existing formula we have. So there were a whole load of us that fed in lots and lots of information. Bristol University took it all in, they listened, the ministers agreed what they wanted to go into the new formula then was worked on, and Bristol University said to the Home Office, here it is. And that was towards the end of 2022. All of last year, we battled with the Home Office to say, great, can you now consult with us on the proposed formula that Bristol University have come up with? And they said, yeah, we're thinking about it. And it never got there. And so when the new Home Secretary became the Home Secretary, we all wrote to her, police, Chief Constables, PCCs, saying, can you get on and do the funding formula? Because it's now nearly 2 years out of date. You could argue it needs updating again now. And she has mentioned it in 2 meetings out of 7 or 8 I've been in with her since July when she took over her new Secretary of State post. She is aware that it is on her to-do list to do. She hasn't given any indication yet when the date will be, but she has mentioned it a couple of times. So that for me is welcome in that she is talking about it proactively. We've got the big National Policing Summit that happens once a year in November, at the end of November, so in about 4.5 weeks' time. And that's quite often one of the places where Home Secretaries make announcements, because there's every chief and PCC in the country, the media are there, BBC were live streaming it last year as well. So I think that she will perhaps make some announcement there. I wouldn't be surprised if the funding formula is referenced at some point during her speech or through the Policing Minister, who will speak on the second day. So we are pushing, we are anticipating, we are waiting, but at the moment we are losing out.
Thank you. Joanna.
Thank you, Chair. I just really want to recognise and appreciate your comments, but I think we are losing sight of the positivity the Commissioner has achieved. And I think it's good. I was going to suggest and ask to look at the previous plan, and obviously it will give us some way of evaluating. But I think the fact when we look at that previous plan, we will be able to sit here, and I think it's fair to say you would have been heavily scrutinised on it had you not have improved 101, had you not have opened the police stations, had you not increased the police numbers, the police visibility. So I think it's fair to say that we need to recognise what you have done, and I'm sure when we see and evaluate your previous plan, all these things are going to come about. I think you're doing great work. Your social media is very much in touch. People are seeing what you're doing. I'm attending residents' meetings. They're telling me confidence in policing is reinstated, it's restored, and that's a recognition of your work to do. And so I just really want to say I look forward to the detail that sits behind this. But I'm sure had you not have kept to your word and produced great scrutiny over the chief, we would have been pulling you up at each scrutiny panel meeting. So thank you.
So I hope you don't think that I was being negative at all. I think I've been very positive about everything so far, but to continue to do our job, I'm here to be constructive, and that's what I'm asking for, is the detail moving forward. So I'm not losing sight of any positivity. There has been some great stuff, and like I say, especially in my area, which I speak heavily of because that's what I'm here to represent. But no negativity. It's positive. But if we want to continue making things better and improving them, we as a scrutiny panel need those details.
Thank you. Any more? Or is that enough for Donna? So we'll get back to you, Donna, about comments from the panel. Thanks everything you're doing and all your hard work.
Could I just ask, are you rushing off?
Not if you want to see me.
Thank you. Can I have 2 minutes when we finish? Is that...
Okay, so we're just going to talk about the work plan, which is obviously, we've kind of spoken about it anyway, haven't we? But as you know, the work plan has been updated following comments made at the last meeting. Are members happy to approve the updated work programme, or are there any additional additions to be made as a result of the debate today? I think we've come up with a few things way forward, haven't we? And you've noted those, have you? Did you want to go through what we've noted? Any differences?
So based on the discussion we've just had about the plan, I'll be in touch with the Commissioner's office about how we can bring that into the briefings that we've got planned for December and January prior to the next meeting at the end of January. So I'll liaise with them about this action plan and how we can bring that to the panel in future once it's available. So we'll include that in the letter that we write to the Commissioner in relation to our scrutiny of the plan this morning. We will make reference to the panel's desire to see the action plan as one of the key outcomes from that discussion. And I think in the previous term, the work programme for the panel was kind of linked to the priorities in the Commissioner's plan, with a view to kind of, as you were referencing, maybe this time next year reviewing progress against one of her theme areas in a meeting, so that then we can dive into a bit more detail on one particular area, because obviously the plan covers a huge amount of ground. So to do all of that in one meeting would not do it justice. So it's about focusing on particular elements of the plan at each meeting, and for you to prioritise which ones you want, what order you might want to do that in liaison with the Commissioner's office in terms of when they think they might be able to demonstrate progress on some of those things, and whether they think some things can come earlier or later across the 4-year period. So that it will be a process of discussion as we go forward with the chair and the PCC's office, and input from the panel as we go forward.
Just a quick question, because I don't know the answer to this, otherwise I wouldn't ask it. But can we have like member champions on different things so we can focus on? We do that at the LGA, and it's actually quite handy. So because it's quite a big plan, maybe we can pick out some different things each that we focus on.
Yeah, as if that's the approach you want to take as a panel, to allocate people to kind of take ownership of a particular theme and then ask questions on that at each meeting, or liaise outside of the meetings. That could be a good approach.
Maybe we can explore that in an informal meeting together, but I think maybe that might be, we'll have a chat about that anyway. It works quite well at the LGA. So we just need to speak about this. So
Sorry, it might be worthwhile mentioning smart objectives, because we ended up coming to, I know Pete Jones was quite frustrated that he didn't get to those as early as he would have liked, but I think that would help. And if they don't meet them, then it's understandable, because at the end of the day, the Commissioner is very reliant on a number of partners. If those partners do not provide the necessary support, for example, probation service, they don't, that increases the load on the police. National, their health service in terms of mental thing, if they don't provide the necessary level of support, that's going to increase the pressure on the constabulary. But I think it might be useful we start with the concept of actually having smart objectives, which is what we ended up with having at the tail end of last year. And I think that would help, all round. Thanks.
Sorry, thanks, Chair. I was going to sort of say about my disappointment with panel members as well. We've got a few apologies, but how many have just not turned up and not sent apologies? And I think it's good to have these, champions for things, but some of us are really, really busy, and it kind of falls on the same people all the time to do these things, which, can we not have subs? Can we not write to these members and ask them if they really want to do it or can't do it, or what the issues are? Because I just fear that we've got this precept coming up. There's 8 of us in the room, 8 of us to make a decision for the whole of Hampshire's precepts. I just don't think it's good enough. So I'm not being negative just towards Donna. This whole panel needs to work together to be able to make these decisions. So it's quite disappointing. We're all busy. We can all send apologies in occasionally, but it's a really poor show today. Really poor.
I've actually written it down on my notes to be discussing it with you after the meeting.
If I can just say, I know there are panel members. I have a deputy, as you well know, but there are panel members here who have no deputy, and I know they're quite busy in some cases, but actually they would probably be members of that council who would be very, very happy to come along. Okay, thank you.
Could I ask?
This gentleman, Richard. Yeah, thank you. Okay. We just need to note a few things, don't we? Yeah? So note that the meeting date for October in the work programme needs to be amended from 24 to 25. Note that the work programme refers to the PCC's annual report being considered by the panel in October. This year, the PCC has decided to align the annual report to the financial year, which went through that last time, so that the annual report will cover the period October 23 to the end of March 25. Therefore, will be considered by the plan in July 25 meeting. Is that so? We've got a recommendation after that. Is that to do with that? Yeah, so just to agree with the work programme, that's, are you happy with all of that? Yeah, I think that's just making that. Thank you very much. And the meeting's closed, and can I ask for the webcast to be stopped, please?